Seriously?
Hey guys, and welcome to 6 Plus Stevo, this Halloween special. Woo! I am joined by my co-host for today, Mr. Dim Reaper.
Hello.
How are you, Dim?
I'm all right, yeah.
So yeah, we want to celebrate the spooky time of year, Halloween. So we thought we'd do something a little different. We are going to be talking to you guys about our top 5 favorite scary movies. So it should be a good one. But look, before we go any further, man, I can't do the mask anymore.
Whew. I can't breathe in that thing. Okay. There we go. Oh, jeez. That's better. So, yeah, scary movies. We're going to be talking.
You can take the mask off now, Stevo.
Cheeky git. Do you know the ironic thing? A bit of a spoiler alert, guys. Pumpkinhead isn't in my top 5 scary movies. So there you go. I've spoiled one of them for you already. Yeah. We've been thinking of doing this for quite a while, haven't we, mate?
Yeah.
Talking about
it started
movies.
as an in-joke, didn't it? Because what video was it? We were talking on someone's live stream. It must have been one of Scarnier's.
I think it was on the Hobby Hangout, and we just started talking movies in the chat and everything, and it just blew up. And
yeah, we talk a lot privately, and it kind of sort of dawning on both myself and Stevo for quite a while, just how much of like we are both kind of like serious movie buffs, and hey. Bonus content.
There you go. So yeah, it's like it's another sort of hobby love of ours is the movies, and with Halloween being today at the time of watching this, we thought what better time than to start doing this and kick off with our 5 greatest horror movies. So yeah, we're going to talk to you about our 5 favorite horror movies, and before we get into that, I guess What makes a good horror movie for you, Dim?
Now, this is an interesting category because I know we've talked privately about this, and
it's not the category you wanted to do the most, is it?
I know it's not. It's not so much that, but I know it's definitely the category that you are looking forward to the most, or at least one of them, certainly. So, I've got anxiety issues, so watching horror has always been a bit of a problem for me. I don't really like being scared, and I certainly don't like being anxious. But that does mean that the films that run on suspense are much more effective to me than outright horror. I mean, I work in the care industry, so like gore and stuff, it doesn't tend to affect me very much, and I just tend to not find it very nice to watch. I don't really get into that sort of thing. I like my horror films to be one of several flavors. And usually either it's something that offsets my anxieties a bit by being kind of funny, definitely helps. I like a horror film to make me laugh just as much as to be freaked out. I don't really go in for those kind of films that they're just interested in scaring you. Or at least if they are, I kind of like it when they don't just plaster gore in front of you for the entire 90 minutes or whatever.
So there's so many different subgenres of horror, isn't there? And so many different we were talking about this in making our lists, like what sort of things make the list, and there's a lot of movies that cross the line between genres. You've got comedy horrors, you've got sci-fi horrors, you've got sort of more thrillers. And are they thrillers? Are they horrors? You've got movies made for kids that are technically speaking horror movies. I mean, you get Goosebumps is a horror movie. I'm not sure many adults will tell you that Goosebumps is very scary, but yeah, there's all kinds of genres and things. So it's going to be interesting to see what movies you pick, for sure. But I mean, without further ado, I'm sure everyone's desperate to hear what they are. We need to get into. We're gonna list them for you guys. Our top 5. We're gonna start with number 5, and we're gonna work our way.
I hate to say this, Stevo, but you haven't said what makes horror for you, have you?
Do you know? One thing I was gonna say was if you watch a comedy and it doesn't make you laugh, it's a crap comedy. And I kind of said the same kind of thing about horrors. If it doesn't scare you, it's a crap horror. But actually, that's not true, because there's a lot of horror movies I like, that I enjoy for whatever reason, but it might not scare me. And in fact, because I watched so many horror movies, not many of them do scare me, at least not like they did like the first time I watched them, whatever. It's some of the ones on this list do. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't want to give too much away with what I'm going to be choosing, but I've got nothing on my list has been made in the last 20 years, put it that way. It's a lot of classics in my list.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Probably more ditto than you.
Young viewers watching this, most of these movies were made long before you were born. Some of the ones on my list were made long before I was born, believe it or not. But yeah, I mean, without further ado, we need to just get into this, man, and hit it off with our number 5s. And so do you want to go first?
I'll go first if you like. I've picked a comedy horror for my number 5. I've gone with Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Nice.
Some people might say it's not a horror film. It's got Christopher Lee in it. It's a horror film, right? Fact. That also makes Star Wars episodes 2 and 3 a horror film, but I agree with that assessment. So, I love Gremlins 2. It's one of my favorite films. It's something that's going to come cropping up quite a lot with me whenever we talk about horror. It's basically a creature feature. I love any creature feature, and if it's dumb or ridiculous or over the top, or hopefully all 3, it thoroughly entertains me. And there's nothing I like more than watching a load of sackless people running from the creature of the month. Like that is to me a big part of horror, a big part of what sort of the aspects of horror that I particularly like and keep coming back to. I'll mention this briefly because I didn't mention it before, but if we do more of these, I don't know. But I'm a very big fan of films that are either kind of trying to be bad films to be entertaining, or are bad and as a result entertaining, are a thing that I like. And I think Gremlins 2 is genuinely a good film, surprisingly considering it was written by Chris Columbus. But it is a devastatingly good film, partly because of some decent performances. I'm trying to remember. So I think one of the people who steals the show is probably the character who plays, I think it's Forster, I've written his name down specifically. Is it? I think it's Robert Picardo or Robert Pizzardo or something like that. My handwriting's terrible, but he's the Doctor in Voyager, and he really steals it.
He is really good.
He really steals it.
I've got a lot of love for Mr. Clamp as well.
That's John Glover. He's really good. He always puts in a top rated performance no matter what he comes in. I mean, he makes Batman and Robin almost watchable for 10 minutes. I mean, he always puts in a top performance. He's a very good character actor, is John Glover. And Daniel Clamp is a very interesting character, to say the least. It's
a hilarious film, isn't it? It's hilarious. And it's such a good film, even before the Gremlins come on screen. It's just like, there are moments in that movie that just crack me up. And it's kind of this sort of satire of 80s corporate money, climbing the ladder, being ruthless in business, the New York sort of sensibilities of New Yorkers all being absolutely horrible to each other all the time and stepping on each other. And there's just great scenes in there, like even you hear the voice over the tannoy in the clamp cable building, and it's like will the owner of so please report to reception, your car is dirty and we'd like it removed. And it's just the little jokes and nods and stuff in there like that. And it's got Dracula in it as well.
It's got several Draculas.
Yeah, it has, yeah. It has, yes, yeah.
But it's got so many cameos.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Lee, obviously we've mentioned Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee probably does the best one as like the mad scientist.
Yeah, the sublime performance.
I think criminally underused, but in a brilliant way.
Mm-hmm.
Without trying to give away spoilers, but it's really, really, really good performance by Christopher Lee. It's never not a good.
The movie's like over 30 years old now, or nearly 30 years old now. If it's spoilers, warnings, guys, there's probably going to be a few spoilers for most of these movies.
This is true.
If you haven't seen them yet,
yeah. Well, he gets criminally underused, but it's cleverly done. But also another I'm beating myself up that I can't remember the name of this guy, and I didn't write it down. But
I know Hulk Hogan makes a big cameo in there in the cinema,
and in the same bit that Leonard Maltin's in, who's like the hi, I'm Leonard Maltin.
Yeah, and in the before, and they did a couple of different versions of it, because they had Hulk Hogan in one version, but they also in another version had John Wayne.
That was for the VHS one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
I've seen that one. Never seen it. I've know of it. The only one I've ever seen is the Hulk Hogan one. And Leonard Maltin comes into it later. I think it's not in the very Brechtian bit where it breaks the fourth wall. I could have just said break the fourth wall, but I wanted to be smart ass.
Which is an incredible scene as well, when they break the fourth wall and there's nods to the camera and stuff.
Daddy.
Oh, it's so good. And they do the finger puppets and stuff. And the bit that still cracks me up to this day is when they're doing the rabbit thing, go bunny rabbit, and then
it becomes Abraham Lincoln.
Man, and I'm like, oh my god, that's just amazing.
Abraham Lincoln.
That's it.
Abraham Lincoln. It's brilliant.
So good. It's so good. And obviously they took the concept. I'm curious, why did you choose Gremlins 2 over Gremlins? Because Gremlins is a classic movie, and probably Gremlins would, although again it's still very much a comedy horror, is much more of a horror than Gremlins 2. Gremlins 2 really ran with the comedy aspect, didn't they?
Because it was a little tidier. Basically this film is kind of prime for me as a young person. I saw it on TV as like a primary school age, like not very old.
Yeah, same.
And it wasn't a horrendous. It wasn't.
I rented it.
I think I
rented it from the video store, and when the fourth wall bit breaks and it looks like the tape's gone, I actually thought the VHS had chewed up in the tape recorder.
I thought I might have had a VHS, but I think the VHS one I had didn't have the VHS cut, which is a bit weird. But I saw it quite young, and I saw it before the first one, but I actually do prefer the second one to the first one. I think the plot's better. I think there's more interesting characters. That's the thing I wanted to mention, just for any kind of film nuts in, is that the guy who plays the old man, he has a much bigger role in the first film. Mr. Wing, is it Mr. Wing? Yeah, I wrote that down. It's Key Luke, who is like he had a film career bigger than probably all the rest of the cast put together. He was the number one son. He was the first actor to ever play one of Charlie Chan's children. The really old, quite racist in hindsight, detective films based on
what character is this?
He played what was the name of the son? I can't remember the name of the son, but he played
in Gremlins too. What character?
He played the old man who had Gizmo.
Oh, I get you.
The strange Chinese gentleman who had Gizmo, and was like, you can have this, but you've got to obey all these rules. And he's got a much bigger role. He dies. Dies very early on.
Test my film knowledge here. So the three rules are: Do not get them wet. Do not feed them after midnight, and do not expose them to bright lights, especially sunlight, because it will kill them.
Yeah. But yeah, I really like Gremlins 2. Gremlins 2 also has more Gremlins in it, which means it's better than Gremlins 1.
Controversial point there. Oh, we see what the comments section thinks of that. Gremlins 2, is it better than Gremlins 1? Oh, it's a tough choice for me.
Totally,
I love them both.
Totally freaking is. Totally
I don't even know if I can choose between both of them because they're yeah. But yeah, good choice, man. Number 5, Gremlins 2 for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So my number 5. Oh, this has been a difficult list to make, and this first one in particular, really difficult choice to make. My pick for number 5, greatest horror movie ever made, is Night of the Living Dead. And I had a tough time choosing this because actually, if I was to pick my favorite zombie movie, it would probably be the sequel, Dawn of the Dead. But I feel like Night of the Living Dead is a better horror movie. Dawn of the Dead is a better zombie movie. If that makes any sense. I don't care if it does. This is my list. But Night of the Living Dead is just iconic. It was 1968. So this is the oldest movie on my list. George A. Romero, the master of zombie movies. And this movie really did create zombies as we know them today. Without George A. Romero, the whole zombie genre simply wouldn't exist. Zombies did exist in cinema before this movie, but they were very much more sort of voodoo witch doctors. It was very much more mind control. They weren't the undead. They weren't reanimated corpses and stuff. And there's just so much this movie does right.
The legend of it is more that they are rendered in a corpse-like state, so thought to be dead.
Yeah, that's right.
They're controlled by, it's like some kind of poison. I got the word fugu's varying in my mind, which I think is a kind of pufferfish. I think it might be the stonefish or something like that, but there's apparently there was some kind of poison that was used to kind of create drownish slaves.
But yeah, so coming from that to making this masterpiece of cinema in my eyes, from the opening scene of this movie, as the car is driving up towards the graveyard, it's just it's shot beautifully. It's like properly iconic. The graveyard and the whole area sort of still exists as well. People go and visit it all the time. The whole roadway leading up to it and everything, where this movie was shot. Shot in black and white. There is a colorized version of this movie. There is actually a remake of this movie, a later one done in I believe 1990. I think the remake was made, obviously in color, but I think there is a colorized version of Night of the Living Dead, but they did it for budgetary reasons. It certainly could have been in color at the time, but they did it for budgetary reasons. But actually, I think it lends something a bit more special to the movie. It gives it this very old classic horror movie feel to it, which is perfect for the original zombie movie as well. It did a lot of things first, well, not necessarily first, but took some quite brave leaps. For a movie of that age as well, it was quite gory. Nothing by today's standards, but there are scenes of zombies sort of eating through guts and things. You see them, and I think they got some of the meat and stuff from like a butcher's or something, and had people sort of chewing into this stuff. So the extras, like, my God, hats off to them for doing that. But it had a lead black actor in 1968, which was kind of unheard of. It probably had been done in some movies, but not many, I would bet, which was a very bold move. And it made a lot of George A. Romero's always kind of putting in a lot of what's the word for it? Sort of a reflection of us in the movies. You know, even in Dawn of the Dead, it was sort of a reflection of us going through this kind of capitalist kind of way of living, of like the shopping and the mindlessness and things. But in this as well, it certainly draws some attention to sort of tensions in America, especially at the end again, spoilers, guys, when he gets shot by the sort of the sheriff and the vigilante mobs that come down and mistake him for a zombie, or do they? It's kind of that part of the movie's been sort of talked about a lot by various people. But yeah, oh my God, just iconic. There is a scene in the movie where Barbara, they're coming to get you, Barbara, which again, one of the most iconic lines in horror cinema, just superb. But when she first meets him in the house, and he sits down and he starts telling his story of like how he got to the house in this graveyard, and he's talking about he was in a nearby town, and there were sort of what they thought were riots and things going on, and he saw the soldiers coming out and gunning people down, and people were attacking each other, and it's delivered. You don't see any of this. You're just hearing it from his point of view, but it paints this picture in your mind, and it uses something that modern cinema just refuses to use all the time. Let you use your imagination, and it's so much more powerful because you get this. There's so much world building. It's mostly shot just within this one little house near a graveyard. But the world building is done through the radio and the television. So you've got news reporters giving reports of what's going on. You hear it on the radio, the messages, and you hear the stories of the various people and where they've come from and things. And it's just so powerful because it just builds, I don't know, there's this imagination and excitement within you when you're watching it. It's brilliantly done, brilliantly acted, and just perfectly done. It's a beautiful film, and I love it. And if you're a fan of the zombie movies, maybe you're a younger viewer and you don't really do black and white, get that out of your head now. Watch Night of the Living Dead, because if you call yourself any kind of fan of the zombie genre of horror movies, you need to watch this movie, the movie that started it all. It is sublime. And then George A. Romero, go on.
I was just going to say, it doesn't technically start it, because the first thing that starts it is a Smurfs book.
I feel like you're going to take us right off topic here. Go on.
I can't remember what it's called. It's like the Black Smurfs or something like that. But it was like the first thing in pop culture where they have like a zombie like infestation.
I'll take your word for that, man. I'll take your word for that.
I wish I knew more about it. Otherwise, my interruption could have been better. But yeah. There we go. So
I'm
George
sure
A.
someone
Romero.
in the comments will know something about it. But yeah, George A. Romero, the master of the zombie movies, went on to make many sequels and spin-offs and things. A couple of really good sequels, and then some not so good ones later on down the line. But yeah, Night of the Living Dead, number 5. Go watch it if you haven't already. It's stunning cinema.
I had to have a Hammer horror.
I had a feeling you would.
Yeah, I picked my favourite of all of the Hammer horrors, and that is The Devil Rides Out from 1968.
I've not seen it. I'm ashamed to say I've not seen it.
It's a weird film, and I saw this as a kid, and it scared the living bejesus out of me. But one of the things that has always fascinated me about it is that it's one of those rare films that doesn't have Peter Cushing in it, but it does have Christopher Lee,
which is rare for a Hammer horror movie.
Yeah, but here's the thing: Christopher Lee plays the hero. He's one of the heroes. He's probably got the most prominent hero part. Nobody seems to have told him he's the creepiest thing in the film, and it really works because he's kind of this. He's this. So, Devil Rides Out is more or less about Christopher Lee plays like a duke, the Duke de Richelieu. I think the idea is that he's distantly related to Cardinal Richelieu, which is interesting that Christopher Lee would play a character with an aristocratic family because that's him. He's from Italian aristocracy, or he's kind of knows what this is like. Because just as a random little factoid that is completely wasted on you, Christopher Lee recorded 2 metal albums. I don't know if he sung a lot. I've not really. I've got one of them. I've not really listened to it all the way. I think he did an awful lot of narrating on it. But they are worth a listen because they're crazy, and it's just like, if you've ever watched any kind of fact show, you might, particularly like something like QR, you might be aware of the fact that we're all technically related to Charlemagne. But Christopher Lee did 2 albums about his relation to Charlemagne, and I was like, why would he do that? Like, we're all related to Charlemagne. Oh no, right, that's it. He can prove it. Yeah, because he's from Italian aristocracy, he can derive his family tree directly to the House of Charlemagne. So he's there.
So what is the plot of this movie? What's the sort of synopsis?
So the Duke and another friend of his, which is Rex, played by Leon Green. Leon Green is like a guy that you've heard his voice in many, many things. He's like the man who did voiceovers because he's got like a very silky voice. If you listen to him for any period of time, you're like, I know that voice from something, and of course you will. At least if you're of a certain age. If you're very young, you might not have done. But he did a lot of voiceover stuff. But those 2 meet, and they're concerned about their friend Simon, and Simon's played by Patrick Moore, who is now in Emmerdale, a British soap, as an old sort of businessman who's like a little sort of like child of the 60s kind of thing. But basically he ends up joining a Satanist cult. So these 2 fellas try and rescue him from this Satanist cult, and then the Satanist cult trying to get him back using a lot of black magic and stuff. And it turns out, the Duke knows all about black magic because he just happens to be a guy who has devoted his life to fighting it. So it's kind of like this interesting thing of how the Duke is kind of the most sinister thing in the room, because he is powerful enough to basically oppose these Satanists who have the Satan in their sort of steading. And it's weird and preposterous and ridiculous. And if it doesn't sound like it's already creepy enough, you've got the leader of the Satan cult, McCarter, is played by Charles Gray, who's like the scary guy who does the jump to the left in Rocky Horror, who's the guy who's telling you what the moves are in the Time Warp song. But he played an awful lot of scary and sinister characters over his time. He's a very, very good character actor, and again, of that sort of school of actor who's just like, I'm just going to turn up and be creepy every time, and it lended them quite well to
some people can just do that superbly, can't they? And Christopher Lee being one of them people. Like I say, when you say that he was playing the hero in a movie, it's well, you kind of can't get your head around that because you're so used to Christopher Lee always being the villain in everything, be it horror movies, be it Lord of the Rings, be it James Bond, be it The Wicker Man, and he is just evil personified, isn't he? he's so good at it.
Fortunately, we do have these characters that occur, and they are like, it's a kind of archetype, but like people like Christopher Lee lend themselves very well to playing a certain kind of hero who's like you think I'm the hunter, you think I'm the hunted, I'm actually the hunter kind of character. And a good character of that is actually Sherlock Holmes, which Christopher Lee has played.
Yeah.
And Peter Sellers has played. Because and Basil Rathbone has also played him. People who normally play villains will sometimes play a particular kind of hero character who is kind of more sinister, because they're kind of like, you've got these certain heroes who go into a situation and they're almost inevitably going to win because they are better and smarter and more sophisticated than we could come up against.
We could make a whole video just about Christopher Lee, I think.
We could,
because he's sublime. I would have loved to have seen him in Doctor Who, either as the Doctor or the Master. Probably the Master.
He would have been the Master, and he would have been.
He would have been incredible. but yeah, oh man, I shall have to give that a watch because that is one I have not seen.
It's not aged brilliantly. There are some horrendous scenes. There's a bit where there's like they get attacked by a giant spider, and they use a real spider, but you can tell they've just blown it up on green, like, and just plunked it into the screen. It's not done particularly well, but I don't like spiders, so I never like watching that bit anyway. Yeah, it's a great film. I love it. It is kind of as funny as it is scary, but it's got some good moments. It's a good film.
Good stuff. I hope we're giving you some tips here, guys, because like Halloween night, after watching this, you need to be putting one of these movies on for sure. So yeah, my number 4. Now I very nearly made this video without mentioning this movie because I made my top 5 and I was really struggling with 4 and 5. 1, 2, and 3 were very easy. They've always been my 1, 2s, and 3s. But this movie almost didn't make the cut, not because it wasn't good enough, purely because, embarrassingly, I completely forgot about it. And then literally a day or two before we were set to shoot this, I was like, oh shit, I have to have that in my top 5. And it's a lot of people's number 1 in a lot of lists of like the greatest horror movies ever. This is usually either number 1 or number 2 with another classic movie that usually nicks the number 1 spot from this. But for me, this is the scarier movie, The Exorcist. This movie fucking terrified me when I watched it. Now, the first time I watched this, well, long before I watched it, I'd heard about it because this movie was very much in the sort of video nasties era of movies and actually did get banned for a while in certain countries. Although it was shown on television at one point before it got banned. But yeah, it was banned for a long time and it was sort of unfairly put in with a lot of the video nasty and the exploitation sort of cinema movies of the era. And when the media was going crazy back then, during the sort of 70s and 80s, it wasn't video games that were causing violence, it was movies. And there was a lot of people up in arms and trying to get movies banned, and especially as they were on VHS now and Betamax and things, and they were readily available to people. There were all these kind of schlocky, really nasty, low budget horror movies coming out, and The Exorcist was kind of bundled in with them unfairly because The Exorcist was not like these other movies. It was really well written, really well acted, with a really good storyline and some great actors. It actually won an Academy Award, or a couple of Academy Awards. It was the special effects in this movie I need to mention. The special effects are astounding. For 1973, this movie was made. And you simply can't, you watch the movie, you're like, how the hell did they do that? And it's all, there's no CGI and stuff back then. It's all makeup and prosthetics and special tricks. And it's just simply incredible. But it's not an easy film to watch. If I would say as well, for anyone who has any kind of religion within them, particularly any Christians watching this movie, would be an incredibly hard movie to watch because it's going to terrify you. It really is going to terrify you. It's got probably the greatest villain of all time, the devil, who possesses the body of young Reagan, a 12-year-old girl. And she is just horrifying. It's terrifying stuff to watch, but it's just really well acted. Linda Blair, who plays the girl, does a masterful job in it. But Jason Miller, who plays, I can't remember the name of the priest. I can't remember the name of the character he plays, but he plays the priest whose job it is to exorcise the demons from her. And he is struggling with his own faith. He's a priest who is right at the point of taking off the collar and throwing it all in, and he is questioning his faith deeply. His mother is sick. He's looking after his mother who's dying, and he's got a lot of his own personal demons and stuff. And it's a fascinating movie to watch. It really is. And there are just some incredible scenes in it. But I cut myself off there. I started talking from one thing, went to another. But like I said, I'd heard about this movie long before I saw it. And I heard about all the stories from the cinema of people watching it in the cinema and getting up and walking out and people fainting in the cinema. And there's all these kind of like urban legends about the movie, and it got banned and everything. So growing up, I'd heard about this movie, The Exorcist, and it was banned, and it was the most terrifying movie ever. And my dad would tell me about it, how he went to see it in the cinema. And I heard other friends' parents talk about it, go, yeah, no, we watched it. Oh, it was just horrific. And I'm like, oh, God, I've got to watch this movie. I watched it when I was 18 for the first time. And I'd seen all kinds of horror movies and things up to then. And yeah, loved the horror genre even way back then. And I watched this movie, and I can honestly say, no other movie probably affected me quite as much at that, at sort of an adult age of watching a movie, as that did. I going to bed that night, I didn't want to look out my window. I thought I was going to see the face of Linda Blair staring back at me. And yeah, it's just such a good movie. And it builds the tension. Like very early on, they find a Ouija board up in the loft. And it all starts going wrong by then. The signs are subtle at first, but then it just explodes with like her turning, and it's just horrific. It's acted so well as well. Everyone plays this dead serious as well, so it really sells it. You can really sort of suspend your disbelief through this movie because of the just brilliant acting in it. But actually, what I found out as well, interesting fact, they're saying a lot of people were sort of throwing up in the cinema or running out of the cinema or leaving, disgusted. The scenes, which people will often think of, I could say this on a YouTube video, but let Jesus fuck me and stuff. It's just like some properly horrific stuff on there that is played. But actually the scene that made a lot of people get up and leave the cinema is one of the scenes in the hospital when they're doing all the tests on her and stuff. And they're putting like the big needle and stuff inside her, and they're putting her through the MRI scanner. It was actually one of those scenes that caused a lot of people to be like, oh, I can't watch this and that, which is quite crazy to think when you think of everything else that goes on in that film. But yeah, it's always in that top spot of like top 5 greatest horror movies of all time, usually at the #1 spot, quite often knocked off the #1 spot by The Shining, another great movie, but I personally think The Exorcist is much more scary than The Shining. I'll let the comment section explode on that one. But yeah, it's usually at #1 or #2, and for very good reason. But yeah, it only makes #4 for my own personal top 5. But I would say probably the scariest of all the movies in my top 5 for me personally, but not my favorite.
My dad took my mum to see it.
Did she thank him for it?
Well, she thought she was going to see something else, and then they realized, and she got up and left, and he had to obviously go. It wasn't the most successful date ever.
I imagine not.
But yeah. I've only watched it once, and I found it quite scary. But I was sort of miming, because I thought when you said, the bit that everybody remembers, I was just kind of thinking of the bit where she twists her neck around 360. That's always the bit that I remember.
Yeah.
Or the power of Christ compels you.
Yeah.
That bit. That's the bit that I always remember.
And the green vomit and there's one scene. Great. There's one scene that for me is the most chilling scene in the whole thing, and it's not any of the ones we've mentioned already, or the scene that got cut and then put back in the director's cut, where she walks down the stairs on her back, like the spider walk, as it's called, which is just creepy as fuck. If you like arch your hands back and she comes down the stairs like that. And it's, I'm getting chills now even thinking some of these bits. There's one scene, and it's a split second. You blink and you miss it, but it's where the priest is outside and he's sort of having his deep breath, and he's just about to go back in there, and he opens the door and he walks in, and for a split second he sees his mother is dying, who is by this point in the film I think possibly has already died, I think she does die during the film, actually. I don't know if I'm remembering that wrong. But yeah, he basically sees his dead mother on the bed staring back at him. And it's literally a split second. And there's just something about it. The way it's shot, it's kind of ghostly and all in white. And it's fucking terrifying. It sends these just shivers down you. Oh.
Well, it's what we keep saying. It's like that. It's when horror's used sparingly, I think, is when it's at its most effective. I think the biggest problem that I always have with horror, particularly, but almost anything, is that when you've got a film that decides it's just going to have one tone and stick with it, it always feels less satisfying than a film that mixes tones. Like if you have a film that's funny and tragic, you feel the humor and the tragedy more keener than if it tries to be consistently one or the other.
Yeah, they can kind of enhance each other, can't they?
Yes.
So
before we move on to the next one, I just wanted to mention The Devil Rides Out was written by the one and only Richard Matheson, who is the author of I Am Legend, the book I Am Legend.
Cool.
Which is one of my favorite horror books. I've read more horror than I've watched.
Again, with spoilers, possibly not one of your favorite horror movies.
I'll break a spoiler right now. Definitely not.
Anyone who's read the book has it's quite a strong disliking for the movie.
yeah. Because there's kind of a point to the title of the book, and if your film is going to not keep the point of the title of the book, why keep the title? Why just not
Phil,
make?
I feel like we need to hold this topic for one of our future
anyway,
videos.
Our top threes.
Top threes. There's a number 3. Hit it.
It's now what? Deep Rising. I fucking love this film. It honestly,
I can't argue with you. It's a fucking brilliant movie.
Of this list, it is the film that I would say is probably my comfort blanket of all horror films. If I want to watch a horror film and I just want to be thoroughly entertained, I will watch this.
It's a guilty pleasure.
I'm not guilty.
I know you're not guilty, but it is a guilty pleasure because this film is unashamedly cheesy and kind of terrible, but so fucking brilliant.
And what a great cast. What a great cast. Because obviously you've got like Treat Williams, who's like the lead, and you've got Famke Janssen, who's the
cheesy one-liners. Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Yeah. But it's like this, whenever I try to, because I always talk all my friends into trying to watch it, and particularly if I've ever got a friend or I meet a new friend and they let me know that they like creature features, this is one of the ones I always recommend, because if you like creature features, you will fucking love this.
And then hopefully they shake your hand afterwards and say, thank
but
you
the only way I can really sort of combine it is that I tend to sort of compare it to a number of films, but it depends on what mood I'm in as to what kind of list I give. But basically, if you take elements of the Poseidon Adventure, Speed 2, Aliens, and Alien Resurrection, and sort of combine it into a film and take a little bit of...
Sorry, I had to laugh because you just mentioned Speed 2, and again, we could make another whole video.
Yeah, but
about
here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I'm not wrong.
No, you're not.
I'm really not wrong.
It's on a boat.
It takes the same fucking terrorism plot and plays it straight. It's just like, it's ridiculous. But
far less successfully than Deep Rising, in my head. But
Deep Rising is such a better film. It's much better usage of your time than watching that awful sequel.
Yeah. Top tip for you guys: don't watch Speed 2.
Well, no. If you enjoy,
shit movies with Sandra Bullock.
Well, I wasn't going to say shit movies with Sandra Bullock. I was going to go with, if you like Willem Dafoe chewing the scenery, it's worth a watch.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
But he has chewed the scenery more effectively in other films. He's criminally underused. But, Deep
Rising, I watched we rented it out on video from the video store, me and some friends, and had no idea what it was. We'd never heard of it. It just looked cool on the cover. We're like, oh, you know, you read the little, because back in our day, the way you found movies was you'd pick them up in the boxes and you'd judge a movie based on its cover art and what it was written on the back, and you know, you'd get, and that's what you had to go on. You took potluck at the video stores, you really did. And if you got a shit movie, you watched it all the way through, because I'm fucking paid for this, so I'm going to watch it all the way through.
We should probably explain to our Zoomer listeners what a video store is.
Yeah,
what a
maybe a
rental
subject
is.
for another time, but yeah, back in our day. But yeah, we rented this out, and we were just like, this is fucking brilliant. This is, because it was a sleeper hit. It was a, and I think now presumably this was released at the cinemas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think it did. If it was, I don't think it did very well. I think it gained slow cult following, because it wasn't a big Hollywood blockbuster movie, although it's shot like one, it's acted like one, and it had some, for the time, really top of the range like CGI effects. Like the effects at the time were incredible, and it was just one of them movies. It was just such a pleasant surprise where it hits you out of nowhere, and you're like, oh my God, this movie's good. And then from word of mouth, Dead Rising has really gained a cult following, and it really is a top movie. It's, if you like just unashamed cheese, one-liners, good action scenes, good like sort of scares and creatures, you're gonna
ridiculous
love it.
plot.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's
great.
It's good.
I just put in some sort of honorable cast mentions, because just before we move on,
there's a lot of names in it, isn't there? A lot.
Yeah, there's there's nobody huge in it other than Famke Janssen's probably the hugest person in it, and Treat Williams. I suppose it depends what films you watch. You might know one of those two people more. Probably Famke Janssen if you're geeky like us. You've seen X-Men. You've seen probably Goldeneye, which is, in my opinion, the best Bond film, but that's another list. But also you've got like Wes Studi's in it, and he's like he's scary looking sort of he's one of those scary looking chiseled men kind of looks, and he's in all sorts of films. And I'm pretty sure he's Sagat in Street Fighter, the live action. I think I'm remembering that correctly. I think that's him. But he does a lot of stuff where he plays kind of like a scary man who's either like a villain or someone who's deliberately to look scary. But he's in a lot of cool films. He's a good character actor. And also Jason Fleming, who tends to play guys who are going to be a victim or guys that are a bit troubled. Probably best known amongst the geek circuit for being Dr. Jekyll in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's really good in it. He has a very memorable character in all sorts of ways.
Speaking of memorable characters as well, there is some memorable deaths in that.
Yeah.
Some horrific deaths.
Oh, yeah.
The creatures in the movie.
And some horrific regurgitations.
Yeah. The creatures in this movie are like these sort of undersea worm things, and they, as the villain in the movie puts it so eloquently, they don't eat you, they drink you. They swallow you whole and then just slowly dissolve you while you're still alive inside them. And it is as horrific as it sounds. And there are some beautifully horrific deaths in there.
Oh, and we can't skip this film without mentioning that Kevin J. O'Connor is in it, who is one of my favorite character actors. And I was got to say as well, sorry mate, I know it's your movie, but I've got so much love for this movie as well. It's one of the greatest endings in horror cinema. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It leaves you on a cliffhanger, and it leaves you so desperate for a sequel that will never come. And it's brilliant.
But
it leaves you wanting more. It leaves you wanting more.
However, I think the ending is so perfect simply because in spite of how much you would want that sequel to happen, it's really good that sequel doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because...
Yeah, if that was made today,
It
a sequel would
it
be in
just wouldn't
production
work.
already. You know, if that would it would be happening, and they'd be looking like cinema does. Is we've got to make a franchise. We've got to make a franchise. But yeah, it certainly they left the door open, put it that way. But that no one went through the door. But yeah, great choice, man. Great choice.
I love that film. Now what?
So my number 3. I love this movie so much. This movie did become a franchise and spawned several sequels and spawned a series and launched the career of its main star in spectacular fashion. And that movie is The Evil Dead. I fucking adore this movie. I think it's just there's so much about this movie that's just iconic, and it's just the pinnacle of this style of horror movie. I think where do I start? So it was very low budget. It was Sam Raimi. It was his passion project. Left film school to make this. Had some savings. Got some. A lot of the people involved. His brother, Bruce Campbell, and a group of friends wanted to make this movie. They had made a really low budget sort of horror movie beforehand, which was kind of seen by no one. And I believe it was something called like the Cabin in the Woods or something like that. And it was basically like a prototype for The Evil Dead, which was originally called The Book of the Dead. The title got changed a little way. I think in some regions it might still be called The Book of the Dead. I'm not sure about that. But it's a story about the Book of the Dead called the Necronomicon. And you read the passages from the book and it awakens the Kandarian demons who then possessed the world of the living and possessed flesh and stuff. And they are kind of a cross between zombies and Linda Blair. It's kind of like demonic, just over the top zombie demon infested people. And it's just horrific and kind of funny. Now, the first one was made as a kind of a horror movie with some sort of comedic moments in it, but it was not really. It horrified people. It was really violent, incredibly violent, and had some horrific scenes in it. The pencil in the ankle being one was just, and you see the pencil go in and it's grinding around and it's just it is hideous to watch. But the later ones became more and more comedies, like the comedy horrors, and they went full down the comedy route afterwards. The second one, actually, which is a bit of a tough choice actually between choosing the first one and the second one. The second one is actually part remake, part sequel. Because Sam Raimi actually lost the rights to The Evil Dead. So in the beginning of the second one, he couldn't have flashback scenes from the first one. So he got round it by basically the first 10 minutes of Evil Dead 2 is basically the story of Evil Dead 1. He kind of had to just reshoot it all and kind of redo it, which is quite funny because if you start the movie Evil Dead 2 at a certain point, it kind of picks off exactly where the first one leaves off. But taking the first one on its own, it's got the ending that I love. Basically, no one survives, which I fucking love in horror movies. I love it when they've got a really dour ending. But the effects in it, what they did with the budget and stuff, and the cinematography, there's sort of the way they use sound and the way they use the camera angles and the way they pan the camera in the most weird angles from like down on the floor, like swinging up and over people. It's incredible. The sound of the Kandarian demon thing in the woods, as it's sort of, you see it, you never see it. You never see the thing that actually attacks them and then turns them into these things. It's just you seeing it through its eyes, going through the woods, coming through the house after these people, and you hear this sound, and it's just fucking, at the time it was just fucking terrifying. And it's just such an amazing movie. And yeah, Bruce Campbell who plays Ash. Just this movie did wonders for his career, and yeah, he's still playing Ash to this day in the latest series of Ash versus Evil Dead, which go watch it if you haven't. It's incredible, so good. It's so much fan service in that series. It's so bloody good. But yeah, all the Evil Dead movies and the series have been incredible. But for me, the first one as a pure horror movie is kind of the pinnacle of that kind of cabin in the woods kind of terrifying movie, and it builds up some nice suspense as it goes up, and then when it hits into it, it is bam, it's in your face, and it's suddenly like you are taken aback by it, because it is so violent, so just raw and brilliant, and like it made me terrified of trapdoors. It really did.
Don't open it.
No, there you go. Another thing that made me terrified of trapdoors. Don't you open that trapdoor. But yeah, like one of them, when she turns, they kind of fight her off and kick her down the trapdoor in this cabin, and then she's there, and for most of the film she's just locked down there, and they've chained the trapdoor shut, and she's just banging on the trapdoor, and it's just yeah,
but they think something scary. Horrendous is coming out. It's very cleverly done.
It's so cleverly done, and even when it starts, when they're playing the tape, and the professor they're listening to his recordings as where he's an archaeologist that's found this book, and he's like and we uncovered like the reading from the book, and he starts reading the lines, and it's just, again, leave stuff to your imagination, but then goes right full on in your face with it. But yeah, it is amazing and such a good movie. They later remade it in sort of late 2000s. I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago they remade it, and it was, as far as remakes go, it was an okay movie on its own, but it changed a lot of things, and it just it didn't have the charm that other one had. It sounds like such a weird word to use for the Evil Dead, but it does have a charm to it, and you can really appreciate what they did. It was a true passion project, and I think Sam Raimi then launched his own career, because he then went on to do the Spider-Man movies and things, and had a hugely successful career, in which most Sam Raimi movies, if not all of them, have Bruce Campbell make cameos in as well. He's in most of the Spider-Man movies as well, in little cameo roles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so keep your eye out for that. And the car, which was one of their cars, I can't remember if it was Bruce Campbell's or Sam Raimi's car, but the car from The Evil Dead also plays cameos in a lot of his movies. So keep your eyes out for his movies for that. But yeah, Evil Dead, just incredible. That's my number 3.
Just a couple of things to add to that. So, Cabin in the Woods, not to be confused with the Joss Whedon Cabin in the Woods film, which I still haven't watched all the way through. It's very creature featurey. If we did this list again, it might feature, but I don't know. I've not watched all of it yet. But I quite enjoyed what I saw. And the other thing is the Necronomicon. If it's sounding familiar to you, or you already know what it is, it's a concept that was invented first by H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote all of the Cthulhu kind of stuff. And it's kind of a horror. It kind of became a horror game between him and his other friends, who were also like horror of the likes of Robert Bloch. Robert Bloch, I think it's Robert Bloch or Ronnie Howard. One of the two of them wrote a Star Trek original series episode which features some of the Cthulhu mythos in it. I don't know if it mentions the Necronomicon specifically, but they mention the old ones, which is like the Cthulhu type gods, placing all of the Lovecraftian nonsense into the Star Trek universe. Probably is quite a dark joke. But a lot of horror writers have taken the Necronomicon as kind of like the horror sorcery book and included it in their stories. So it's got a long tradition of that. So if you're thinking, oh, they've ripped off Lovecraft. No, Lovecraft in his lifetime encouraged people to do that with that book. So just a bit of clarity there. Just thought I'd bring my lit gig out for a moment. It's we've both done threes. We have, haven't we? Yes,
we have. It's now for number 2.
Right. Yeah. So my number 2 has already been mentioned. My number 2 is 1978's Dawn of the Dead. I kind of had
best zombie film ever made.
As a fan of creature features, I was going to have a zombie film in there, and I like myself a zombie film. It's probably one of the few things that I tend to watch, and obviously, I've mentioned before that I like bad films that are entertaining. So I've watched an awful lot of films that fill that role, like the god awful Resident Evil films. In which you learn that Mia Jovovich's character, Alice, is better than everybody in the Resident Evil universe, including all the characters from the fucking games. And we're going to spend 6 films, or 5 films, I can't remember how many it is, there's 5 or 6 films, showing you how often that's the case. You know, and, you know, at least they'd show you rather than tell you, I suppose, but still, it's a bit ridiculous. Mary Sue abound. Also, other sort of daft, crazy ones, like Cockneys versus Zombies.
Yeah, seen that one.
It's got that Fitbird from EastEnders in, and Honor Blackman, rocking an AK-47, which I did quite enjoy. It's a ridiculous film.
It is.
It's utterly ridiculous. I mean, I always love it when you get like a low-key UK thing, which is my number 2 was almost Shaun of the Dead. But I felt I couldn't have 2 comedy horror films in a horror list. That just seemed unfair, seeing as Stevo's gone mostly serious with his stuff. So, but I really like Dawn of the Dead. I think Dawn of the Dead is really good. We've already kind of talked about how important Romero is in terms of zombies. But, I mean, for me, like, Dawn of the Dead is the iconic one. It's just that whole thing of them all, like... And just thinking about it just in abstract terms, if you were going to try and survive an apocalypse, going to a huge mall where everything can be easily found is a really good plan.
Yeah.
And then all of the things that unfold that make it actually this wasn't as good of an idea as I would think kind of happens in the film. Like the fact that you get there and it's already full of people, because of course it freaking is. And then more importantly, yeah, it's a mall. Guess what? The doors are easy to break into by more zombies and also by other people who are less nice than you who have the same idea. And it's just brilliant. And just the way it sort of unfolds and unfurls at the end, towards the end, and has some very, very crazy dark twists. Like,
is very much like I was saying, Night of the Living Dead. It's very George Romero, very much commenting on the sort of human nature, and the fact that it's sort of it's almost it's implied through the film that why do they come here? Why are they here? It's because there's some kind of memory, and he says perhaps this place was important to them in life, and there's back in there somewhere retains some tiny little part of their humanity that. You know, they're kind of just they're at home there. It's a funny film as well in some points, isn't it? The zombies themselves, when they're sort of they have some fun with them in the mall. I
have to say, horror to the musical accompaniment of what is effectively Muzak is about as perfect as it gets.
Oh, iconic!
It's perfect.
It is brilliant, and it's became like an iconic horror sort of tune. I mean, it's effectively elevator music. It's brilliant.
Well, that's basically what Muzak is, but just like corporate safe music that is kind of horrifying in how banal and inoffensive it is. Just combined with
some iconic
things the film
iconic lines in that movie as well, like when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth, and it's just
which is quoted in the the Murder Dolls song, which I think is called Dawn of the Dead. We are the dead and we're coming for you. It's like a kind of dark metal song, which I quite remember. But
I remember watching that film with friends, and it was one we used to watch over and over again. And it's one of them movies that you very much put yourself in the shoes of the protagonists in it. You put yourselves in their shoes, and what would I do in that situation? And it's kind of, most of us, most people have. I mean, if you're anything like me, you've got a plan for when the zombie apocalypse happens, like what you're going to do and where you're going to hold up. And, you know, it's just, it gets you thinking on those lines. And yeah, it's brilliant stuff. Brilliant. And some amazing special effects in that movie as well. The iconic scene where the zombie they've stopped the helicopter to refuel before they get to the mall. And the zombie, one of the best zombie deaths ever, as he's coming to get them, he climbs on top of the boxes while the helicopter propellers are still going, and it just slices the top of his head off, and you see the blood trickle down, and he just sort of slowly slumps to the ground. But it's just, so well done.
It's just fantastically dark. I just love how fantastically dark it is. Also, like, just going back to the whole thing of like what you said just now about the like you kind of like thinking what you would do is part of the reason why I really like this film, and part of the reason why I picked it is because it inspired pretty much all of the computer games that would come on that would, you know, not only take on the genre, but
like The Walking Dead, you know, all of this stuff.
Yeah,
we got a lot to thank George A. Romero for, a lot.
Yeah.
He is sadly missed because he passed away a few years back, didn't he? Not very long ago at all, and it was very sad because just the master of the zombie genre, the creator of it, and just a legend of a man.
Yeah, it's a good film.
Very good film. Yeah, really good film. Man, I just want to keep talking about that film now. But yeah, no. Yeah, my number two. Oh God, this movie. Oh, so good. And while I'm watching this movie, it could sometimes just take the number one spot, but not quite. But it's the closest thing to the number one spot. It is just so close because it's so fucking good. And it's a remake. But unusually for Hollywood, a fucking good one. And it is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh yeah,
it is. If you want tension, this movie does it instantly from the opening scenes. The soundtrack, the dum 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 soundtrack that plays sort of throughout, just sets you the mood straight away. And you from the opening scene when the helicopter is chasing the dog through, I think it's set in Alaska, I think. And it's an all-male cast in an outpost in Alaska. Basically the thing, for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, and if you haven't, you need to watch this fucking movie, please. It's an alien that life form that has been found in the ice by another research team, and they find a body of an alien in the ice out of this crashed spaceship. They bring it back, it thaws out, and it starts attacking and taking over people, and it imitates human life forms, so it sort of kind of like absorbs and then imitates them, so that no one knows who the thing is through the movie. And this, while you're watching the movie, and even now you can see so many videos on YouTube of people dissecting this movie and discussing fan theories and speculating on who is the thing and when they were infected, and it's kind of it's the movie that just perfectly personifies like paranoia, because everyone is paranoid of everyone. No one trusts anyone because anyone at any time can be the thing. And it waits and it bides its time for the right moment to strike. And it is just beautifully terrifying. I've got to say, so Rob Bottin, I believe I'm pronouncing his name right, or Rob Bottin, I think it's Bottin. But anyway, he did the visual effects for this movie, and like, just I doff my cap to this man, because the special effects in this movie, all done in the days before CGI, with animatronics and makeup and prosthetics and everything, he just are about as good as these kind of effects can ever get. And they're done so amazingly. The imagination in this thing, because this thing doesn't just imitate a lot of movies. If you've got like Aliens, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff, I remember even as a young kid, I used to watch these movies and be like, oh, it's a cop out, man, it's a cop out. Of course aliens always look like humans, it's just they don't have to make proper effective looking aliens, and it's always like, always felt like a cop out. Delivered in some movies, like with Body Snatchers and stuff, to great effect. But this movie don't bother with that, because when the thing strikes, this thing mutates and can cause, it can imitate, it's been going through space, imitating and devouring all creatures from all kinds of different planets. And so it can mutate into any of them. It can mutate into anything that it's ever possessed. So it's got like tentacles, and it's got like alien looks to it. And the great scene at the beginning when it is the dog is infected, and it's locked in with the other dogs, and then starts attacking them and turning them, and that's the first moment it reveals itself. Now most movies you'd see a little flash of the creature, which is done really well, and usually that's a good way to do cinema, is you don't want to show it all right away. But with the thing, they don't fuck about. Like from that first scene when it first strikes, it's like bam, like whoa. And I knew from that scene, like, strap yourself in, because you're in for a bumpy ride with this movie, and you really are. Lead actor Kurt Russell, one of John Carpenter's favorites to work with.
Yeah, I was going to say, John Carpenter never shies away. He's always going to show you. Doesn't do suspense.
And I don't really want to give away my number one, but he was a big fan of my number one. But
leave it there.
Yeah, he spoke about not always seeing in that movie, and he said, in my movie, I wanted to show it. I want to show everything, and he didn't fuck about. And there is some just monumentally good scenes in this. Some hilarious scenes as well, which are so horrific but so funny at the same time. One of the characters has a heart attack, who is the Thing, and it's great.
Yeah.
And,
the CPR going through the chest.
He has the heart attack because the Thing mimics you perfectly, even down to your faults. So it actually mimics this man, and he suffers a heart attack for real. They're then using the paddles on him, and he goes to the paddles, and the whole chest opens up into this mouth and chops the guy's arms off, which was actually done by the guy. They got a guy in, an amputee who didn't have his arms, to play that scene and have rubber arms attached and molded on there for him, with a mask of the actor's face over him. And when you watch the movie, you cannot fucking tell, because it is done so perfectly. But as they then flamethrower him, because it's the only way to kill the Thing, is to flamethrower it, because every cell is a living thing that can take you over. They torch him, so parts of his body are trying to escape, because it can, and his head leans back and sort of drips, hangs off the table, and then grows spider legs, this upside down head, eyes appear out of his neck like eyes on stalks, spider legs come out, and this Thing goes scuttling off. And one of the characters turns around and sees it, you gotta be fucking shitting me. And it's just such a good fucking scene. Another scene I've got to mention as well is when they're doing the blood tests. So McCready, played by Kurt Russell, has got the few remaining survivors tied to chairs, and he's taken blood samples from all of them, and he's like, right, we're going to find out which one of you is the Thing now. And he takes a soldering iron to a petri dish with their blood in and burns it, and if the blood reacts, they know they're the Thing. And they go through this whole scene, and then one of the characters, before he even gets to do it, starts turning and attacking everything. And the captain of the whole crew, after the scenes happen and they've all nearly been killed and everything, and he's there sitting there in the chair, and it's a very quiet, somber scene, and he's still tied to this chair, and he says something like, I don't know if I'm going to get the line exactly right, but he says like, I know all of you gentlemen have been through a lot, and these have been testing times. But if you wouldn't mind awfully untying me from this fucking chair. And it's just such a hilarious scene. It's just acted sublimely. It's so good. There's literally every single scene of this film is perfection. It really is. It's perfection. It's sublime, and it could so easily be my number one. And sometimes it possibly is. I've watched it so many times, and I will continue to watch it many times. But yeah, it was a remake of a black and white movie called The Thing from Another World.
From Another World, yeah.
Which itself,
or from outer space, I think sometimes.
Yeah, which itself was a movie made from a book called Who Goes There, and yeah, it's then since had a prequel made, which again, you could make a whole video talking about the prequel, because they had some great special effects people on that movie making all the animatronics and all the stuff.
You were telling me about this, yeah.
So good. And literally there was a cut of the movie like this because they wanted to really pay respect to John Carpenter's The Thing, and they really did. And then the producers said, nope, we don't like the way it's going. We want all the special effects CGI. So then all these scenes they'd painstakingly done with these beautiful animatronics and stuff, and I've seen the footage of this stuff and it's incredible. It's really good. They covered over it with CGI, and it looks like CGI, and the movie, even in the short time it's been out, has aged terribly because of that. And even the crew that worked on the special effects had no idea this was happening. They thought it was being just slightly enhanced with CGI, some little extra touches. They sat in the screening of the movie, watched in horror as all their hard work was just covered up and not seen by anyone. And the movie was panned pretty much by everyone since. And I pray and hope that one day a cut of that movie can be done with the original effects put back in, and we can see what could have been. But anyway, that's a separate movie, which is still called The Thing, even though it's not a remake, it's a prequel, but they just called it The Thing, which really confuses the fuck out of people. But yeah, John Carpenter's The Thing, my number 2. Yeah, before we get to our number ones, we've got to do some honourable mentions.
Yeah.
The movies of ours that just were very close to making the list.
Yeah.
So we couldn't bear not to mention them, so we got to mention them. You want to go first?
Yeah. What are we doing? Are we mentioning them all in one go? Or are we alternating?
Yeah, hit it. Just
So I've got sort of like a nominal 3 or 4. I think I'll just stick with the 3 that I've got. But I mean, I picked a couple of black and whites, and I picked a more modern one. So my 2 main honorable mentions are Dracula and Frankenstein, both from 1931.
True classics.
They are real classics. They are not as scary, I feel, as I always felt they should be, but there's some very good moments. And the thing that I always like about watching them is that in both cases, the strength of the horror is entirely down to the performance, particularly the person playing the villain. And in Dracula's case, it's Bela Lugosi, and in Frankenstein's case, it's Boris Karloff. And these films must have been made by the same crew, because there's an awful lot of the same casting. Dwight Fry, for instance, plays both is it Reinfeld or Renfield? It's Renfield, isn't it? Renfield and Fritz, who's like the doctor's assistant. Good bit of trivia to know if you want to have some horror trivia. Igor is not the name of the assistant in the original film, and I believe also the same is true of the book. If the book has an assistant, I cannot remember. I have read the book, but it has been a while, and it's been a while since university. That's the last time I read it. And Dwight Fry plays both of these characters. Dwight Fry played an awful lot of kind of sinister, creepy characters, and he was very, very good at it, and would frequently chew the scenery. like Renfield, especially because he spends most of the film in a sanitarium. He's gone mad by the second act, so he's entirely crazy. But he opens the film of Dracula, and you get some very, very sinister moments with Bela Lugosi. The thing that surprised me about the Bela Lugosi film is just how little you never see Bella's fangs. It's really strange. Like, and it sort of cuts away. And like, I think if the fangs were there, it'd probably be more impressive. I think that's part of maybe that was why Christopher Lee's Dracula was so scary to everyone, because he didn't stop showing you the fangs.
What's the moments they call in movies the thing where you think you've seen something in a movie but it actually wasn't in the movie? What's that thing they call it? The Mandela effect? Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that the Mandela effect? Am I getting that right?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Something to that nature, but it's kind of like the beam me up, Scotty kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of the things where people probably thought they saw the fangs, especially at the time as well. Because probably a lot of people, as he's going in, probably going like that, and they probably remember it as being that. But what was your other honourable mention?
Oh well, I was also going to mention the other bit of shared casting is Edward Van Sloan, who is like the Dr. Waldman or Waldman, it might even be, in Frankenstein, and he also plays Van Helsing in the Dracula film. And it's always fun watching him in the Dracula film because he's trying to do a very foreign sounding accent, but he keeps slipping into Scottish. It's quite funny to watch. And when you watch Frankenstein, he doesn't even though it's basically a film set in a place that's probably some kind of German town. He's just thoroughly Scottish. There's no effort made to have any accents in Frankenstein, even though they try and go for authentic accents in Dracula. It's really, really weird. And the other honourable mention I'm going to give to is The Mummy from 1999. Yes, the one with Brendan Fraser in. Partly so I can mention Kevin J. O'Connor again, but not just because of Kevin J. O'Connor. Like Rachel Weisz is always worth watching, and Arnold Vosloo plays a very, very good Imhotep.
I would argue that is more of an adventure movie. It feels more like an Indiana Jones type sort of thing.
It is, but it's also a very, very scary film. And to be fair, it is a remake of a horror. So I could also give an honourable mention to the Boris Karloff Mummy, but I haven't watched it all the way through.
Possibly because it's too scary, so that would be high praise indeed.
Just because I'd caught like some of it on TV while I was flicking channels. I've got it to watch. I'm going to watch it again. I'm trying to redress the fact that I haven't really watched an awful lot of horror. This was a much easier thing for me to do because whilst there are some omissions here, this is almost the totality of horror films that I've watched, with a few exceptions. Like I've watched an awful lot of things. I almost mentioned Evil Dead 2. I really, really like Evil Dead 2. I never really watched the first. And I really like Army of Darkness because it's
so fucking good.
It's right in my ballpark of kind of film I like to watch.
They're all great. They're all great. Evil Dead 2 was very, when I choose in between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, it's just
I think
choice,
the Mummy will feature in some other film list if we do more of this, probably. I'm not too bad about it just being an honourable mention. What are your honourable mentions?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 written down here, but I mean, like, one of which I haven't written this down here because I knew it was in your honourable mentions. In your top 5 list is obviously Dawn of the Dead. It was so very nearly on there, and basically anything Evil Dead, all the sequels could easily be in this list because they're all fucking awesome movies. I've got another John Carpenter movie and it's not a genre movie I'm generally that fussed on in terms of horror. Is the slasher? No, Christine could have so easily, that would be up there as well. Another fantastic movie. John Carpenter really is the man. He's done some fucking incredible movies. Halloween, and the slash. Yeah. The slasher movie is generally, they're kind of all a bit samey, aren't they? I mean, I enjoy some of the classic ones like Friday the 13th and things like that. But Halloween, the original Halloween, is if you watch it now, like it is tame. It is so tame by today's standards, and there's actually very few actual kills in the movie. Like the body count in the sequels just go right up. And I actually really like Halloween 2. Halloween 2 I really enjoyed as well.
Well, it's kind of because of like the meme status that it kind of achieves.
But it's just the mask is iconic. Famously known now as a William Shatner mask, sprayed white, which is what the mask they got. And he is creepy as fuck. And again, it's the doctor who was looking after him through childhood and stuff, who talks about him, and he's like, I looked in the eyes of that boy and I saw pure evil. And it's just like it's just some iconic lines and stuff in there. And he just refuses to die. And it's just a really good Halloween movie. It's just I tend to bring it out quite often on Halloween and watch it. I'm like, it's one of the few nights I can get the missus to watch a scary movie with me. She doesn't like scary movies, which is a shitter for me because I fucking love them. But yeah, that one could have very easily, it was actually in my top 5 before I remembered that, oh fuck, The Exorcist is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Why isn't that in my list? So that's what bumped Halloween out of the top 5. Another honorable mention is another remake, The Fly, the 1986. It's in the 80s anyway. It was made, starring Jeff Goldblum, with again stunning special effects, great acting.
I've actually seen that one.
Really good movie, really good, and I love the whole concept of it. Again, remade from a very old black and white movie.
I was going to say it must be because it's a very, very traditional horror conceit.
Yeah, and it's done really well. It's a remake done right. Yeah, really good. The 80s was good for remakes, actually. And then my last honorable mention, American Werewolf in London. Really, really good movie. Famously, actually one of Michael Jackson's favorite movies, and it's where he ended up directing the video to Thriller and everything from that movie, and it's why Jackson sort of turns wolf-like in it, because he was such a fan of that movie.
That's cool.
So yeah, it kind of inspired the Thriller music video and kind of brought the
makes my bit of trivia that I'm going to throw out to Tim by comparison.
Go on.
It's got a very brief cameo by Rick Mail. I say cameo. He was cast as just like he's one of the people just watch. He's just in a crowd and just watches. He's in a crowd scene for American Werewolf in London.
But yeah, some great scenes in that movie. The scene in the subway with the sort of the lone sort of businessman being caught out, and there's like a overhead scene, and you see the wolf approaching him. It's very quick cuts. You don't see it very properly until the very end. Although one of the best werewolf transformation scenes ever in cinema. But it is the greatest werewolf transformation scene ever in cinema. Really, really good. And it was a good year for werewolf movies there. It was the same year, I think, as The Howling came out as well, which is another good werewolf movie. But yeah, American Werewolf in London for me will always be the pinnacle of werewolf movies.
What's that one? What's that one with the British soldiers in that encounter a werewolf?
Mate, we're gonna do top 5 werewolf movies at some point. So I'm trying really hard not to spoil loads of things for future videos if we end up doing more of these. Cool. I'm trying so hard. Cool. But yeah, that's another good one. But yeah, they're my honorable mentions. So we have done it, guys. We are here. You're about to hear our number 1 favorite horror movies of all time.
Oh, what's that coming? Da, da. They're giving the game away yet. It's Jaws. I picked Jaws from 1975. I fucking love this film. Jaws is basically one of the things that gives me the love of creature features. It's not the first creature feature I ever watched. I could have also, in my honorable mentions, mentioned Arachnophobia, which was the first creature feature I watched. I watched it at the age of 9. And now you know where my fear of spiders comes from. Oh, yeah. Anyway, let's not think about that film. We're talking about Jaws. So I love Jaws. I grew up with this film, actually. I've seen it quite a few times. and my parents really like it. It's one of the few horrors that I can get away with watching when I was at home with my parents, and it kind of epitomizes for me the best aspects of what makes a really good creature feature, which is why I always love watching all the creature features that are terrible, because they very rarely do any of this. But it was one of those wonderful films which just had a bunch of happy accidents happen, which just made for a much better film. The whole idea is you're going to see far more of the shark, but the rig was, I think Spielberg started calling it the dumb thing or something like that, because it was just all sorts of manners of problems with it. So
they had a horrendous shoot, didn't they?
They had a horrendous shoot getting the shark things, but as a result, it forced them to be very sparing with when you saw the shark, which makes it scarier.
Yeah,
because you've got all of that suspense, and when you add in John Williams's sort of score for it, where it just like that endless tension created by what I think is probably a cello, like just horrendous amounts.
One of the movies that had one of the strongest effects on people after seeing it as well, because I still think of that movie when I go to the beach, and if I'm in the water and I'm up this high in the water and I can't see what's down below under the water, I still get those chills, man, and I get moments where I'm like, oh, I need to get out of the water now.
It's interesting because it's a fear that so many of us now have, but it's one of the least likely ways of leaving this mortal coil.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm pretty sure, it's probably not true now because goodness knows what the statistics are, but I'm pretty sure you are more likely to die from being killed by a sandcastle than you are a shark.
That's probably true. That probably is true. We've killed far more of them than they've killed of us. That's for damn sure.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, it's difficult to know what to mention about what makes this film particularly good. But I think there's one scene which shows you one of the crucial elements that you need of a horror film. And we've already covered some of this, but it's that scene where you have a dramatic moment where you've got a bunch of very good actors in the room and they are talking about horror. And they are letting your imagination fill the blanks in, and it makes it more horrifying. So probably any of you who've seen the film are instantly thinking about the scene where they're comparing scars, and then it transpires that Quint starts telling this tale about how he was on the USS in Indianapolis, and he ends up in the water, and all his friends are eaten by sharks. And that was an absolute brilliant scene. It's probably one of the best
Oscar worthy, and
brilliant.
I don't know if they did, but he should have received an Oscar for it.
I think Dreyfuss got an Oscar.
It sends chills down you. And he's like, they come back and they take a few bites, and then you make some noise and they scare them off. And if I'm doing his accent horrendous, I'm trying to do his voice, and he says, sometimes you scare them off, sometimes you wouldn't. And it's just like, it's so well done. And he thinks one of his mates is asleep, and he wakes him up, and his body turns, it's just half of his mate left there. And it's based on true events that actually happened, that scene, and it makes it all the more poignant and just. Oof.
Brilliantly played by Robert Shaw there.
Oh, and he's sublime in that movie. I love Quint. And he goes out like a warrior as well, like stabbing a shark being eaten slowly. It's such a good fucking scene. So good. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that a lot of people, especially a younger audience, sort of turn their nose up at now and sort of laugh off. Oh, yeah. And even in like Back to the Future 2, when Marty sees the virtual realities from like Jaws 19 come out the cinema and snap it, he's like, and he goes, shark still looks fake. It's been one of them movies that it's been so, people have always poked fun at and stuff. But listen, I think the shark looks fucking great in it, and I'll fight anyone who fucking says otherwise. I think it looks great in it, and I think
it's definitely better than those sharks in Deep Blue Sea.
That shark in Deep Blue Sea. Fuck me. I lost massive. I was having a conversation with someone a little while back who had recently seen The Meg, an all right popcorn flick, Jason Statham in the about the megalodon shark, And she was like, yeah, it's your girlfriend. I said, yeah, it was all right. Yeah. And she was like, oh, it's brilliant. I was like, well, oh, so brilliant. It was entertaining enough. I said, it's no Jaws. She was like, oh, Jaws is cheesy. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, you know nothing about cinema, do you? And I'm like, we can't be friends. I'm sorry, we can't be friends. But yeah, no, Jaws is yeah, very true words as well. But yeah, I think yeah, you know a lot about people about the type of films they choose, and I can lose a lot of respect and a lot of admiration for people when they start revealing what films they like and don't like. But yeah,
he knows what some of my guilty pleasure list is.
yeah,
and he probably has lost some respect.
Well, I don't know. I've got to share a lot of those guilty pleasures, although you don't feel guilty about them.
No. I feel guilty about any film I watch.
Jaws was a great choice, man. It was totally going to go in one of my honourable mentions until you luckily let me know beforehand that it was your number one choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, my number one. Most of you already know what it already is. It's Alien. It is the greatest horror movie ever made. It really is. It is. I think it is the perfect movie. It's just so fucking good for so many reasons. So where do I begin with this? I could literally talk for hours and hours and hours about this movie. I have watched it so many times. I have it tattooed on my body. I love the design. The Alien is just the most iconic, perfect design of any creature ever. Designed by H.R. Giger, a
Geiger,
brilliant,
but yeah,
Geiger. He an artist who created the most biomechanical dark pictures ever, and created an art book actually called the Necronomicon, and had the artwork for this book, which features I think the actual artwork is called Necronomicon 3 or something like that, and it's the picture that Dan O'Bannon, the writer of Alien, presented to Ridley Scott and showed in this book and this picture in this artwork. And he said, if we can get someone to make this and this be our Alien, it'll be the greatest horror movie ever made. And Ridley Scott, luckily, loved this stuff. And then they had to get him, and they had to fly him out there from Sweden. Oh, I think he's Swedish. Crucify me in the comments if I'm wrong there. But they flew him out, and yeah, he fully went in with all the concept art. He designed the egg, the alien, the face hugger, and all the derelict spacecraft, the space jockey, all this stuff, and did an amazing job on it. And then they had another gonna kick myself now because it's on camera. I can't remember his name, but another designer who designed all the Nostromo and all the spacesuits and all of that kind of stuff, and did an equally brilliant job. So you have these two very different design aesthetics sort of coming together and just creating this beautifully designed movie that was done so well. So the design is a huge part of it. This alien that has no eyes, the big long head with the mouth within a mouth, and is just a beautifully designed thing. It really is. And the whole concept of how this thing gets on board, because the story is as well, Dan O'Bannon was writing this script, and he had the general idea of the thing. They receive a signal, they land on a planet, they go and investigate, and then at some point the alien gets on board. And he was trying to think, he said, no, I don't just want the alien to like sneak in the door, while they land on. I've got to figure out a way, an interesting way I can get this alien on board. And it was his co-writer who was helping him with this, who actually had the idea in the middle of the night, had some sort of nightmare, and he rings Dan O'Bannon and says, listen, how about the alien screws one of them? And he's like, what? He's like, yeah. He jumps on his face, plants his seed in him, and he goes on board. And there's later on this thing bursts out of him. He's like, oh my God, that's brilliant and everything. And yeah, so this is that's how this thing sort of came about. And Ridley Scott, who didn't like horror movies, was not his thing. He thought they were cheap and stocky and nasty. And one of his crew who works with him a lot was always trying to get him to watch various horror movies and things, and couldn't get him to watch any of them, with the exception of one, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There was something about that movie and just the movie poster itself that had a deep effect on Ridley Scott, and a lot of inspiration from that went into Alien, which sounds kind of funny because they're very kind of different movies in a lot of ways. But when you really think about it, it's the same kind of thing. It's just this one thing that's there, relentlessly picking them off one by one. And it was a funny story when he said that he was listening to Ridley Scott read the script for Alien, and he's reading it, and he's read a little way into it, and he's sitting in the other room and he just hears him going, fucking hell, Jesus Christ, at the certain scenes in the thing, like when the alien burst out and stuff. And then there was other things put in because there was a bit of contention in the writing. Dan O'Bannon has they kind of fell out with the producers of the movie, who sort of ended up sort of almost optioning his script and tried to kind of push him out of it and really take the script off him and change a load of things and then give him no writing credit. So Dan O'Bannon was treated pretty badly with this, but they did add some great touches to this. They actually came up with the idea of making Ripley a woman, because Dan O'Bannon wrote all the characters and then actually wrote in the script saying that any of these characters can be either male or female. But he never for 1 second envisioned the main character being a woman, being Lieutenant Ellen Ripley. And it was great because you want to talk, there's a lot of talk these days about, you know, the strong, independent female characters. We don't have enough of them in cinema and everything. Ripley from Alien is the strong female fucking character, because she is just awesome. And again, went on to have a huge career through the Alien franchise and become an incredibly powerful, like, female character. But yeah, they also put in Ash, the android, who was a great addition to the movie, played by Ian Holm, fantastic actor, and played that part so well, so sinister, so scary. And when he goes a bit crazy, because he's been put in there by the company who want the alien, and the crew are expendable, they want the alien, and he's there to ensure that happens. And there's just a great scene of the way they say to him at one point in the movie, they say you admire it, and he says, I admire its purity. It sort of talks about how it doesn't have these delusions of morality and stuff, and it's just a perfect killing machine. And it is. The thing drips acid for blood. It's just so fucking good. The first moment where they go aboard the crashed, the derelict spacecraft, which looks amazing. The miniatures work, which is another thing I've got to mention. The miniatures work. How this thing is all miniatures and fog machines and stuff, and it's just so haunting and sets your imagination off. And I think it's the low. I'm jumping from one bit to another because I'm very fucking passionate about this movie. But not only is the alien terrifying, but the location's terrifying. Much like with The Thing, because no one's helping you. And they even put it in the tagline in the film: in space, no one can hear you scream. And that's it. No one is coming to help you. No one. And it's just you to be, especially at the end of the movie when Ripley is completely alone, other than with Jonesy the cat. She's completely alone. She's got literally herself to rely on to get herself out of the situation. And there is, she's who knows how many hundreds of light years away from Earth, with no one coming to help. That in itself is quite terrifying. But yeah, they climb across the derelict, and you see the space jockey. And again, there's this alien in this chair with his chest burst open. They find it in this most iconic scene with him in this big sort of command chair with this telescope thing coming out, and you're like, sets your imagination off. Who were these? Where did they come from? Why were they carrying these eggs? Did they carry the eggs? Did they get on there? Unfortunately, later on, Ridley Scott came back to the franchise and tried to answer a lot of these questions in an incredibly unsatisfying way, because the space jockey ended up just being a big, bald, white guy, which was just so disappointing. And this exoskeleton ended up becoming a suit. But we don't want to talk about that, because let's disregard that and remember the imagination that we had when watching it, because that's better than what came.
Well, the thing is, just briefly on that, is that, like, I watched Alien Covenant. I didn't like Prometheus, but I watched Covenant, and I hated it at the time because I was just like, no, human beings wouldn't be that so freaking stupid to ignore all of these quarantine protocols. Nobody would be that fucking self-destructive, and like just absolutely unbelievable.
We've come so far.
Ironic. And I thought, there's no way that would ever happen. In a post-COVID world, I'm starting to regard that film.
It's incredibly realistic.
And actually, I would say it's probably the most realistic film ever filmed.
But yeah, so John Hurt goes exploring. He is the most enthusiastic of all the crew members to go and see what's going on, and he gets the face hugger attached to him. And my God, one of the greatest deaths in cinema history, at the breakfast table.
Particularly because if I know my trivia correctly, nobody else in the no one else on the cast knew that was going to happen.
They knew. They had a gist of what was coming. They knew the scene that this thing comes out. They had no idea to the effect that it would happen. And so the screams of some of the crew and their reactions when this blood comes spraying out, and John Hurt is so expertly flailing and fucking jittering, and they're holding the thing in his mouth. I mean, you any woman, like, don't watch this movie if you're pregnant. Because this will make you terrified of childbirth, and it's probably the most scary thing for a man, because he's effectively been raped and he is now going to give birth to alien offspring. It is like, this touches on a lot of deep-rooted fears and things. It's deep shit.
It's primal.
It is. It really fucking is. But the crew, the acting as well. Oh my God, they had set the whole thing of what's been called truckers in space. And it's believable. This isn't like Space Odyssey 2001, where everything's bright and gleaming and silver and shiny. This is an old run down spacecraft. These are just contractors out to do a job on a mining vessel. They're sitting around the table in one of the early scenes, arguing about pay and bonuses. And there's this sort of, you see the tensions between them and the banter between them, and they're so believable. It's not in a rush to get going. Most movies these days are in such a rush to get to the next bit and move the plot along. This film's quite happy to set and let things happen slowly, and the tension builds slowly through this film. It builds really slowly, but by the end, by the final act, when Ripley is alone and she's trying to escape the vessel as she's set the self-destruct mechanism, my fucking God, it is a roller coaster ride, and it is just like white knuckle. And even now when I watch it, I'm just glued to the screen, and it is just so fucking good. And there's just so many good scenes in it, so many good scenes, like when he's looking for Jonesy the cat. They're trying to find the cat, and he walks in, and this is a great thing. I've owned this movie on several formats. I owned it on VHS, I've owned it on DVD, I now own it on Blu-ray, and each time I watch it on a new format of an improved picture, the movie gets better. Because I remember watching it on VHS and seeing that scene, and it was scary. And when I watched it for the first time on Blu-ray, seeing the increased picture in that, I'm like, oh fuck, you can actually see the fucking alien behind him. You can never see that on the VHS before, but you see it there hanging from the chains in this sort of cross shape, and it's just hanging there, just watching him. No rush to strike.
In that huge engine room, baseball cap,
which almost looks like a cathedral or something. It's kind of gothic, and you got the water drip running down. It is every scene in the film is beautiful. It's shot beautifully. The set design is stunning. The creature design is stunning. It's acted perfectly. The tension is just set perfectly. The ventilation scene, where they're tracking it on the beacon, and they're like, "It's behind you, it's in there," and he's in there starting to, he's like, "Listen, guys, I need to get out of it now." He's like, "It's there, it's there." He's like, "Where?" And you turn around, you get the quick jump scare, and it's like, "Fuck!" And it's just brilliant. It is perfect horror. And unlike The Thing, you barely see the alien through it. You get little glimpses of it. You get little shots of it. You can't quite see what it is until the very end, which is probably the weakest part of the film, because you can see it is a man in a suit. Although they got an amazing actor, a guy to play it who wasn't an actor. It was a guy, believe it or not, they met at the pub and just said, "You're perfect frame for this role. Do you want to come to the studio and get into a suit?" And he did. I think he did some kind of gymnastics or something, because he was incredibly skinny, and that's why they wanted him, so they could have the really skinny limbs and everything. But I just want to tell one more little thing about this, because I've watched, I've got the special edition of all the extras and stuff and the making of and everything. And I'd advise anyone to watch the special edition version of it as well, because there's extra scenes that were cut out, and the director's cut is really good. But there's a great story. One of the guys, they were showing about one of the screenings when they were showing the film, and they're showing, it's right at the end, so the tension's been building, and the whole audience on the edge of your seat, and the movie theater is silent, just silent, watching in horror and just glued to the screen. And Ripley is trying to get away, and she's trying to get Jonesy, and she's carrying Jonesy in the box, the cat, and the alien's stalking her, and she's trying to get out, and there's 5 minutes till detonation, and all the sirens are going and everything, and everyone's on the edge of your seat, and she drops the cat, and she stumbles and goes back to get the cat, and the silence is broken in the cinema by just someone in the back goes, "Leave the fucking cat." And it's just it was just, one of the crew members talks about that in the video, and I just thought it was just so good. But yeah, Jonesy survives. Spoiler alert.
It's one of the reasons why I really, really like that film.
Yeah, because
if the cat had died,
and even makes an appearance in the sequel. And you little shithead, you're staying here.
He's the only thing in the entirety of the Alien franchise that gets a happy ending.
Yeah, totally.
Think about it.
Yeah. He goes off to a loving home somewhere and lives a life. But yeah, and just like most cats, when he watches the crew being devoured by this thing, not one fuck given. I'd see no emotion on that cat's face. He's just like watching it. Just that's the thing that's happening. Like, just thankfully it's not me.
It's horrendously expensive to make animals emote. That's the real truth of it.
I mean, again, my top two movies, if we want to talk about animal actors though, the dog on The Thing and the cat in Alien, there you go. There's two Oscar winners there for animal actors.
Although chances are the noises that resemble them, the noises that they make might not even be them.
It's very true.
Most likely Frank Welker doing the animal voices.
But yeah, man, that's I mean, I honestly, I could talk on about every single scene of it, and there's just so much about that.
Stevo can really geek out about the Alien franchise, not just this one as well.
No, yeah, the sequel, I've got a lot of Aliens could have it's kind of, I didn't want to put it as an honorable mention because it would have given the game away, but one of the greatest sequels ever made. As a youngster, was my favorite movie of all time.
Game over, man. Game over.
And again, probably one of the most quotable movies ever made. But as I've grown older, Alien is the superior movie. And that's not to take anything away from Aliens, because Aliens is a fucking incredible sequel. And
I
brilliant movie.
sort of prefer Aliens, but I think we both kind of agreed it's more of an action film than a horror. Yeah,
I'd say, and I've had the debate with people about Alien itself. I've talked with other horror nuts, and when I say Alien, they look at me like, really? And
Alien is a horror.
They're like,
it is a horror.
And I've argued with it, and they said, no, it's a sci-fi. I'm like, it's a sci-fi horror. But I'm like, listen, it's a horror set in space. If you want to get real funny about it, yeah, it's on spaceships. It's got those sci-fi stuff and that. It's a fucking horror. It's an alien on board killing people in grisly ways, one by one, until they're all dead. It's a fucking horror movie. You know, it's sci-fi horror I'll allow, but it's a horror in space. It's a horror in space, and it's the best damn horror ever made. And there you go. But yeah, there you go, guys. There's our top fives for you anyway. We've been wanting to do this for so long. Myself and Dim, we've wanted to do this, and
We've been planning this a while.
Yeah, and we've got a lot more in mind for the future. But so this is the time now. I want to ask you, the audience, because as you know, this is not the usual forte of this channel. And most people in YouTube will say to you, stick to your path, stick to your one thing, and don't divert. But we thought this is a special. This is, at the moment, we get away with this. This is a special for Halloween. And if anyone's interested as a special treat for Halloween, we got this. But we're really interested to hear your thoughts on this now. If you would prefer that we never do anything like this again, or if we do it on another channel or something, then please say so. We won't be offended. If you want me to stick to the usual type of content on this channel, then say so. If you'd like to see more of these movie-related videos, which we would love to do, because we're really into the movies in a big way, and we've covered horror with this, but we could cover so much more with subgenres of horror and other genres as well. We can cover action movies, sci-fi movies, comedy movies, all kinds of things, guilty pleasures, because we've got some of those. There's so much. So please, guys, share in the comments below if you would like to see more of this kind of content on the channel. If we do more of this content, it will be kept in its own playlist. So I'll have a separate playlist. So, you know, and I will still continue doing the usual content as well. That won't go anywhere. I'll still be doing that. And that will still be the prime purpose of the channel. But we would like to do more of this. And also, I'll say to you, share your top 5 horror movies in the comments below. Tell us why we're wrong and you're right. And give us your top 5s, because we would love to hear them and we'd love to read them.
With that said, guys, this is 6+ Stevo signing out and wishing you all a very happy, very terrifying Halloween.
Woo! Insert catchphrase. Learn from my mistakes.
I really can't fucking breathe in this thing, man.
I can't see.
I need to puncture an air. Oh, there is an air hole.
There you go. There is an air hole in this thing.
Happy Halloween, guys.
No wonder you've been a big girl's blouse in that mask. You weren't using the breathing hole correctly.
I could have smoked through this as well, couldn't I?
You're always smoking, Stevo.
I don't want to hold the mouth open like this. It looks like some kind of a different kind of doll, like working orifice.
It's called Jennifer.
Right. Yeah, we're done. We're going to stop. I'll press stop now.